just want to have sex with men.
Hey to everyone who watched the last part of the two-part video essay that I have made. This is for you. So first of all, thank you guys heaps. It does mean a lot that the work I put into this is actually getting somewhere, and I really hope you guys are liking what I'm doing, and I'm glad that seems to be the case. But I also just wanted to make a couple of clarifications and to admit to some errors. A big one is I called Arcane a prequel series. It's technically not a prequel series. It's separate to the League main continuity and simply utilizing the characters and their basic likeness for its own story. I was misinformed, that's on me. I still stand by everything I said in that video in regards to Arcane and The Flash, but I really want to emphasize, because a lot of people have mentioned disagreeing with me, that if you like The Flash, that's perfectly fine. In fact, I think it's awesome you got a positive experience that I wasn't able to get. That just means that the film's appeal is to a wider demographic that I just so happen to not fall into. And that happens sometimes. Just because I thought something was bland doesn't mean you're wrong for thinking the opposite. Especially because I'm in the minority of like-minded people, judging off of the Rotten Tomatoes scores at least. Despite everything I said, I think the movie has a lot of promise and is just held down by the baggage of the previous universe, and my foolish belief that it was ever going to be able to give an ending that would satisfy every avenue it needed for me to be able to love it. And it's a really high standard I was holding it to, and that's not fair. I still want to see a great Flash movie, but if that's what this was for you, I'm glad. It means good things for the future of DC movies. With that being said, on to the video. Hey, welcome back. You might remember me from the previous video essay about why The Flash was mid, and so close to being a good movie. If you haven't seen that, please go watch that. You'll need the context. I'll give you a bit of time to go watch that though. Are you back yet? Huge. Anyway, with all that boring, God, I wish DC made consistently good movies like Marvel sometimes does, whining out of the way. We can get back to the controversial part of the discussion today. Similarly with The Flash, I'm just going to assume that you've seen Arcane and understand the basic plot summary. And before I go on, I really have to emphasize that I enjoyed this show a lot. I watched it twice when it first aired, I scheduled the podcast specifically so that we could talk about it, pushing it back even so everyone had time to watch it, and it leaves with so much to talk about and so many great lessons to learn about writing characters and writing story arcs. But the problem is, well, the show isn't great? Shit, where'd all my subscribers go?
Sausalito, turkey, honey, ham, and salami. Pepperoni, provolone, pastrami.
Like again, it's not bad, I'm not insane. Put down the pitchforks, guys. It's an excellently animated, well put together show with a competently written story and some crucial letdowns in the development of specific characters. While I am aware we are getting a season 2, I still feel like the direction of the story is rather than lessened, more so provided with missed opportunities to explore and build to satisfying conclusions. Off the top of my head, while writing this, Victor came to mind, a scientist with a compelling side drama that feels like, come the end of the season, didn't really go anywhere. Which was a shame, because every time Victor was on screen, I was loving every second. I loved his charming demeanor and his reserved attitude. He's handsome and he's witty, he's a bookworm, but he's not as socially inept as other more cliched writers would make him out to be. He feels like an excellently written character, with very little to do except hint at more interesting character progression in future seasons, which is incredibly frustrating as a viewer. And I can forgive that because there's a huge cast that's going to only get bigger next season to cover it in equal measure, and some characters are always going to get left behind or shifted to the side for the moment while the other heroes shine through and the story marches on. However, my issue isn't really with Victor, it's with Echo. Echo seems cool. He's rash, he's angry, he's reserved, he has an obvious chip on his shoulder, and perfectly parallels how far Powder has fallen since she became Jinx, by showing off similar qualities. Thematically, he's an excellent addition to the show. His fight scene with Jinx shows off this dynamic perfectly too, and it's just beautiful to watch. I don't need to tell you that, switching back and forth between past and present as both characters remember their lost innocence as they violently battle to the death on a burning bridge. It's powerful stuff, I can't deny. Now here's the part where I tell you it's not good enough. I'm mostly kidding, but for those of you in my audience who don't play League, I'm going to ask a question that should illustrate my point pretty succinctly. Who the fuck is Echo? I'm being serious. If you've watched Arcane only and didn't read up on the lore of League, you might not even recognize Echo as the same kid from that rundown shop at the start of the season, who appears in like 2-3 scenes, if even that. I get that his fight with Jinx has symbolic meaning for the show, but as an audience member, trying to watch a good television series rather than a recap of League wiki lore, it doesn't really make sense. Why does he get this fight? We haven't spent nearly enough time establishing Echo as an important player in the story. We've seen Jinx through the entire show as she descends into madness because she can't let go of the crushing guilt she feels from her actions at the end of Season 1, Part 1. We are told Echo is angry at the world and at upper society, and wants Jinx dead for killing his friends, and the voice actor, Reed Shannon, does a great job convincing me that this is how he feels, but we never see it. So with every punch thrown and every music beat, every transition to 2D keyframes to a childhood we never saw for characters who barely have any on-screen chemistry or even an on-screen relationship between each other, it rings hollow. It feels less like a turning point in the characters' arcs or a climactic clash we dread for the safety of our heroes, and more like a demo reel or a show-off of a project from a portfolio, or just another advertisement for another Riot game. Don't start commenting how, duh, of course it's advertising League of Legends. I swear to God, shut up, don't be deliberately obtuse. We all know that. The point is, the storytelling should come first, rather than the lore. I don't know for sure about this, but judging from conversations I've had with people who are more familiar with the in-universe lore of League, they loved this fight. The characters seem to have an extensive connection at the very least, heavily alluded to, and I can respect that. But just as I stand by the fact that it's stupid for me to expect to have seen Hollywoodland and the 1966 Batman television series, as well as have read decades of articles on cancelled Superman projects to understand the climax of The Flash, it stands to reason that to feel the totality of the confrontation, I shouldn't be forced to look up a wiki page about how huge of an in-game rivalry these characters might have. And again, I understand that the show is not a direct adaptation of the lore, but it feels as though we're supposed to expect some kind of implied connection between these two characters that hasn't really been established. Maybe the seeds have been planted in League somewhere, but show it to me in the show. Show me how close these two were. Show me how much their lives parallel each other. And show me more than half an episode before they fight, and we don't see one of them again until the end of the next episode to set up a Season 2 arc. The easiest example I can think of is this. Imagine you're watching a Warhammer series, stay with me, and right at the end of the movie, the final fight is between Reboot Guilliman and a resurrected Horus Lupercat. And instead of building to this final fight throughout the course of the film, it instead focused on Guilliman and the Ultramarines fighting off a Tyranid invasion on Terra throughout the whole film. And only in the final 15 to 30 minutes do they introduce Horus, relying on you, the viewer, having read all of the Horus Heresy books to date, watched countless lore videos explaining such, and also being a huge Warhammer 40k fan to begin with. While Horus and Guilliman flash back to the glory days of the Empire, fighting alongside the God Emperor of mankind, pre-cosmic comatose, training on their difficult planets at birth, and espousing dialogue about how Sanguinius was the greatest of us all, and your pride led him to the slaughter. If you're a Warhammer 40k fan, that sounds cool as fuck, but most people aren't Warhammer 40k fans. So they're going to be looking at the screen and thinking, what the hell is a robot guilty man, and why is he trying to smash an hourglass? Why is that hourglass a spiky dude in black armor? Wait, he died? Then how did he get here? And granted, some Warhammer 40k stuff is like that. It's the same with all nerd subcultures, and it's much easier to stomach when it's a book that's already going to be a big commitment, for example, or years of comic lore, even a wiki page. The thing is, movies and TV don't really get that luxury. You're appealing to a mainstream audience by virtue of the chosen medium. To turn a profit and keep viewers coming back, you need to present something accessible and familiar. And that isn't to say you can't have complexity. There's a reason Bojack Horseman didn't fundamentally get any better or learn any lessons, and then when he did, the show ended. Familiarity, accessibility. Arcane isn't really all that difficult of a concept. The Hunger Games meets Game of Thrones meets ATLA. Sprinkle in some Spider-Verse, boom, you're good to go. Neither really is The Flash. Imagine a guy who can run so fast he gets to wherever he was trying to get there before he started running. And then imagine that guy running so fast he could travel through time. Bit of a stretch, but we've all seen Back to the Future. And as long as it sounds like it makes sense to somebody, then it's good enough. I worry simply that more shows and movies and the like are going to learn the wrong things, that viewers don't want a strong story, they want to be shown things they recognize, and soy face at them. Granted, that's always funny to do. I want more than that. I don't want everything to become a cinematic universe, another Marvel property consisting of 2.5 hours of advertising the next Marvel property until the sun explodes in 4 billion years, or however long we have left. I want more stuff like Spider-Verse, where the references take a major backseat to not only an excellent story, but even to some incredible inclusion for minority groups. I want to see more stuff like Bojack Horseman, where almost every joke is a reference to itself or a real movie or show, or a sleep pun, but one with so much heart and always prepping the next gut punch that it's hard to sit through it again. Not because you hated it, but because you loved these characters so much and it hurts to see them put through all this pain again, that you'd rather just live your days pretending they're all okay somewhere after the credits roll. I want nerds like me to have their spaces, their references, their movies, but more than that, I want to share that with the world. I want people to understand why I love The Flash, why Barry Allen is more than just a spastic with undiagnosed ADHD and social anxiety. I want to understand why people love and are so compelled by the dynamic between this blue-haired Harley Quinn and this black kid with a skull painted on his face. Movies and TV are, broadly, mediums to tell stories. To say otherwise is frankly wrong. Everything from a documentary to a home video tells a story that anything between a magical dragon helping a young boy save all of human imagination to little MaxibonHR on a bicycle at his abuelo's house. A culture and a filmmaking community so focused on references and so heavily reliant on nostalgia and pandering worries me. Instead of telling a great story, you're telling me stories about how great this other story was. You're telling me this story isn't good unless I know all 500 stories leading up to it, or at least the impact is lessened. Honestly, when I feel like I'm being nostalgia or lore-baited in a film or television show, the only story I think of going through the creator's mind is, I give up, someone else has already done it. And it's especially frustrating with Arcane, because Arcane was so phenomenal for what it was, at least on a technical standing. Every time I was sucked out of the show, it was so blindingly obvious. Every inconsistency is all the more exaggerated in comparison to a show that was otherwise so careful. The first part of Arcane Season 1 did the impossible. It made me care and adore lead characters I otherwise had no intention of thinking about or learning about for a game I thought was lame. Vi's dynamic with Caitlyn was an excellent Romeo and Juliet story, with a tragic dilemma splitting them apart, and I loved their romantic tension. Their subtle animations and movements most other studios wouldn't have the time or budget to pay attention to, and I'm hooked on them for the next season. Wrapping around to the start of this whole thing, even though I felt he was underutilized, I loved Victor. I think his Dr. Frankenstein-esque story of struggling with his inner demons and an insatiable thirst for knowledge, and his friendship with Jace was believable and thrilling. Subsequently, Jace's story feels like it will eventually build to greater things, with the High Council. The villain Silco was a bit mustache-twirling, and seemed a bit cliche when he was first introduced, but as the season went on, his toxic relationship with Jinx expanded into a deeper connection and love that he clearly has for her. While his intentions are nowhere near pure, the love he has for Jinx clearly is. Vander's short stay as a father figure for Vi and Powder left such a huge impact that's comparable directly to Eddard Stark in Game of Thrones, whose execution sent shockwaves throughout the cast and events that were felt all the way up until the end of the series. But for every time I remember Vander, I think about those random bullies who became goons for Silco, or Milo and Clagger, who are such nothing characters in the long run who were given so much time to sit around and chastise Jinx, culminating in them dying and being left only as voices in her head. There are characters that only exist to further the main character's plot. And that's fine, you can do that, but it's just a bit disappointing when the rest of the character writing is so good. And crucially, it leaves me wondering why, true to his name, Echo is left behind as an empty core in a dark, long tunnel of what could have been the most compelling secondary character of the show. In a vacuum, all of these are fine, but they're each individually microcosms of why I personally couldn't love Arcane, as much as I so wanted to the entire time I was watching it. Arcane is an excellent show buried under minor grievances that simply bring it down to being just pretty good, and perhaps that sounds harsh. But personally, I look at it as a good thing. If Arcane had all of these factors working against it, being tied to a property I'm quite sour towards, characters being left to the wayside, a fairly simple story that takes clear reference from many other similar properties of its ilk, and an entire half of the show in the upper city I was initially much less interested in, and despite all of that, still came out to be a show that most people adored, that I loved watching at the time, and that I still think is pretty good despite its flaws, then that is some solid work that the team can build off of for Season 2. I only ask that rather than leave tidbits for longtime fans, which the showrunners are still completely free to do, they prioritise showing off the characters who are going to matter, expanding on the elements that are going to be important and introduce them more naturally. Arcane Season 1 could retroactively become one of my favourite shows ever if Season 2 picks up on these issues I personally saw. But as it stands, it's just a really good show that just barely misses the mark at being great. Anyways, that is the end of whatever this was. I'm trying out some more video essay stuff while I work through everything in the pipeline. I just hit 100 subscribers, I think we're at 102 now. That's pretty cool. That's freaking awesome. Thank you to everyone who actually watches these videos I make. You've been wonderful, and I guess I'll use this point to plug that I have a Patreon now, that if you feel like you're supporting, you can feel free to. It's only $1 a month, or $5 if you can afford it, but seriously, no pressure. I'll be giving some early content as well as some uncut stuff to my patrons, and I get them to help with my video output where necessary, as in giving advice and stuff like that. So far I only have the one patron, so I'm just going to give an extra special thanks for helping me to William Hopkins. That's all from me. Take care, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much for 100, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!